This is an article about why pastors are joining the Great Resignation from Sojourners. The article talks about how, according to a recent poll data by Barna Group, a California-based research group that studies faith and culture, that many pastors are considering. I noticed there was an effort on considering instead of leaving necessarily in the demographics that they were given, but are considering leaving the church. Of those polled, 38% of the senior members consider leaving the church, and pastors under 45 had a rising number of 46% that have considered leaving the church since the pandemic started. The article didn't give numbers on those who actually resonated. I would love to see like firm numbers on this, but I looked at it, and the article was written. I forgot to write down her name, but it was a religious person, so maybe they don't want those numbers completely out there for everybody to take a look at. But the problem is they're not leaving for the right reasons. They're leaving because they're frustrated with not having enough money because of the pandemic, or they're seeing some frustrations with how people have been dealing with the pandemic and how politicians are being kind of hypocritical for some of them. But they're not leaving because they've lost faith in God. They've lost faith in they're almost doing like the I'm not religious, but I have a relationship with God kind of thing, because they're not leaving God. They're just leaving the buildings, institutions.
Right. And I did pull out the pastor's name. Her name is Melissa Flor Bixler. She's a pastor of her own church, location pending, but yeah, that's what the breadth of that whole Great Resignation read to me. It's no real movement from pastors or people that work a senior pastor or what have you moving away from religion, as you stated. It's just more of, well, this pandemic fucks shit up and I'm not making enough money, so I got to go do something else.
It still is a step in the right direction. Like getting disillusioned with it is like the first. Oh, I've never been religious, but I've heard it's the first step of getting out of religion, is like finding little cracks in the walls on it. So this could be. I'm not going to say all of them are suddenly going to go atheist, and we'll see them hosting this show. But I would say that there's probably going to be a drop off of at least some of them. But I don't know how significant that number would be.
Yeah, I think Josh made a good point where, you know, it while I would want them to be resigning, because what they're saying is, look, I I investigated this and I really tried and it just doesn't hold up. They are saying something about this organization. It's not working the way it should, right? I'm called from God himself. God put me here. God put this family here, this building, and yet they're not able to run. And not only that, but there's infighting and people doing just shady stuff to each other and all of this. And hey, if the reason that you step away from your church and from continuing to give people bad conclusions and bad evidence and just poor epistemology in general, if the reason you do that is because you just didn't have enough snacks at the Sunday meeting, I gotta be honest, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with
Snacks.
that. You gotta have those snacks.
If I'm gonna sit there for 2 hours, you gotta feed me.
That's
I've almost left the stream because you guys didn't provide me any snacks.
Josh, Secular, you two are too optimistic, I have to say. Sorry, didn't get your joke. What is stopping those guys from just leaving this one organization and creating their own church and try to become a televangelist on their own? There is nothing stopping them from doing that.
True. I see your point, Mateo. I do. I think overall it's because, with everything that has caused such restraint during the pandemic, hell, even my family's church is still not in person. And I haven't heard word of them going back in person for the foreseeable future. They've been virtual ever since the height of this. And this has been like over a year running, 2 years. So, or however long, as the years are bleeding together. Hi, 2022, y'all. But it's, it's powerful in a sense that now we're seeing less senior pastors moving away from having this being their full-time duty, because there's lack of participation. There's older generations that want to be in person. Virtual is not on the hippity hop side of things. It's tough.
To say it.
It's what's at the top. They're trying to find new ways of having money being funded to them. Text us, here's my Venmo, here's my Cash App. Send me some monies. Like you can't. It's hard. It's difficult. People don't like that. And the support and familiarity of being in service is what bolsters and benefits churches in the first place, because you have that surrounding emotion, you have your fellowship, hey neighbor, yeah, you have that. And now that you're lacking that, that's why they're moving away, because they can't even support themselves. I mean, there ain't no Joel Osteen, but hey, there's something in that game apparently. But interestingly enough, there was some news according to a survey released Tuesday of the past day of whenever this will be released per recording, by the Pew Research Center. This group, commonly known as the nuns, which is basically shortening for non-believers, now constitutes 29% of American adults. That's up since 2016, which was at 23%, and even more so since 2011, which was at 19%. So we are seeing great increases for us seculars. Hello. Because of this, great resignation of pastors moving away from, full duty preaching jobs and into something else.
I have a hard time getting excited about the nuns just because I know a lot of people that fit the nuns and they still love tarot cards, and not in the way that they know it's an exercise or whatever. I still know people that like homeopathy. They just don't believe in God. I wish we could get a number of how many people are skeptical in that group, and then I'd get a little bit more excited about it.
That's why the segment's called A Step in the Right Direction and not a leap forward in the right direction, right?
You were so good.
We got the first step. We got they're finally starting to question, but we do need better snacks. If we're going to invite more people, y'all, we need better snacks.
Well, I did start the segment saying that I'm a pessimist and I couldn't keep the optimism going for a whole segment.
Had to come down at some point.
That's fair.
Everybody's got to end this stream with this frown.
I will try to get the optimistic thing in here, and let me quote some part of the article. Here, somebody said, "My colleagues have shared about how difficult it has been to convince white liberal churches to stand against racism and reimagine economic practices that emphasize redistribution." So it's not only about lack of money, but also apparently they want to follow the word of God. Apparently, I don't know, but the leaders are kind of against them. What do you think about these guys? What do you believe them? Do you believe that this is just an excuse? Do you think that they were actually trying to do something right? Do you have any opinion about this?
The thing is, I don't think necessarily the small churches are the Joel Osteen types. I do think some of them believe what they're saying and they're actually trying to practice what they preach, especially these ones that are talking about how they did the Great Resignation under reasons for vaccine mandates and masks, and how the church was sending out bad signals about that. Some of them are on the up and up. So I do believe that some of them have great ideas for humanity. Is just I want to take the religion away from it.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing is just a continuation and an increase of the wave that we have continued to see for the last 20 to 30 some odd years. I mean, as this wonderfully interesting world that we have has gotten more connected, and we have been able to actually find information. Look, you're not a damn physicist because you watched a video on YouTube, people, but you can learn some damn basics. And that's good, because for a long time, there were a lot of us that just didn't know anything. And there's so many stories out there where somebody says, gosh, I learned this one fact, and all of a sudden now I'm skeptical about everything, and I always seek the best evidence. And this is that first little bullet point. This is that first little box that has to be checked off, and hopefully what this will lead to is exactly where Josh was saying, hopefully what we'll see is more people stepping away further, and they'll stop being nuns and they'll start being, humanists and skeptics and atheists, and they'll just be out there advocating for stuff, and we won't even have to do it anymore. We'll all be out of jobs. I mean,
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
That's a little bit more optimistic than I'm willing to go for it. But like I do see like the older generation dropping off maybe because they're not used to the technology. Like Jena made that point. Like I go to the movies all the time with a mask, and I'll see the older generation struggle with assigned seating. So like the fact that they can't figure that out means that they're not gonna have the technology to support these churches, and like this whole technological streaming age isn't for a lot of, I know some tech savvy older people. I'm not trying to say all older people don't know it, but they're going to lose a lot of people through this, and I can see churches falling by the wayside, and without the institution being there, it could be hard for people. I'm not saying completely by the wayside, but it might be like with polling situations where you might have to drive a little bit further to get to the church that's closest to you. And that's going to hurt some people doing attendance, and you need the constant reinforcement of the word of God in order to get people to continue to believe this thing.
To bring it back to a bit more optimism, I for me, I recognize that as a Black atheist, you know, there are a lot of silent voices within the attachment of Black people and Christianity or religion in general. And I know there's like a recent article that referenced how minuscule, how minimum of us are, and not only just stating that you have a non-belief, but actually outwardly stating that you have a non-belief. A lot of us still remain closeted. I am also an exception of that because I am outside of this internet sphere and closeted. So I think this provides some encouragement as far as, you know, this withdrawal of, you know, building more churches and having more of the, you know, ministries going on, to where it would allow the open-mindedness of looking at other things more critically and discerning for oneself, not just as a Black and atheist, but all people, that now we don't have this hindrance of churches trying to open their doors and welcome you as you are type bullshit. You can finally do your own due diligence for yourself, for your own life, and apply a bit more skepticism.